Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Technique Tuesday. My name is Ali Board, and at the moment I am broadcasting live from my studio down here in Dorset. A very happy new year to you. It's January 2024, just in case you're watching this on catch up, and I have lots of exciting projects ahead of me this year. Now, if you are watching me live this morning, there seems to be quite a few of you in the room this morning. I think today's subject is a popular one. Then do get involved in the chat. I will try to keep an eye on it. It's just down here in the bottom right hand corner of my screen. So if I haven't had the opportunity to say good morning to you, hello, thank you very much for tuning in. Now, I know, because I've been reading the chat this morning, that a lot of you are a bit intrigued as to why I have specifically written Dorset Seahorse for this. But let me backtrack just a little bit before I get to that. So a lot of you may know that 2024 is the year of my 50 at 50 project. And my 50 at 50 project is where I'm creating 50 works of art for my 50th year around the sun. And then later on in the year, when I will give you much more information, I'm going to be auctioning those 50 paintings, and 50% of the profit is going to the Dorset Wildlife Trust. And Dorset Wildlife Trust is part of a much broader selection of wildlife trusts. And what they do is deliver very specific support and volunteers and environmental support to projects that are happening in your local community. And Dorset, obviously, we have a coastline, we have moorland, we have heathland, we have rivers, all sorts of things. Now, why is the Dorset Seahorse important? The Dorset Seahorse is important because we have the beautiful Jurassic Coast. It is a beautifully maintained and preserved area of the UK, and very important for wildlife. And actually, Dorset is the host to an incredibly rare species of seahorse. And I've got to look at my notes. Studland Bay. So if you live in Dorset, you will know it. Studland Bay, very, very famous part of our coastline, is the host to the long-snouted or spiny seahorse. And actually, that seahorse is on the red endangered list. So really important for the conservation of that species. And because of the 50 at 50 project, I thought it would be an incredibly good excuse to paint one of them. It has been quite the challenge to find a photograph of one, but I have done it. So let's show you the photograph that I'm working from. Here is that absolutely beautiful creature. And you can see, whilst it's classified as a long-snouted seahorse, you can see why it has another name, which is obviously the spiny seahorse. So that is the photograph that I am going to be painting from today. And when you see my demonstration, you'll see that photograph up in the right hand corner, because I'm using it for inspiration. We're going to try some experimental techniques today, bit of watercolour. I'm surrounded by my usual stuff, so who knows where this is going to go today. Now, if you want to find the resources and all the rest of it, you know where to go by now. I'm going to crack on with my demonstration this morning because I've got quite a lot to paint. But here is that resource, www.learningtopaint.co.uk. And don't forget, you can also follow me on social media too by using the @ symbol, Ali Board Artist, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or wherever it is you like to get your social media from. So without further ado, let's go to that overhead camera and I will show you where I have started with this project. And I don't really know where it's going to go today, but come along with me for the ride and we'll see how we get on. So there is that overhead camera. There we go. You can see I've got seahorse. It's just lurking over the top of my water pot. It's always a challenge to fit everything in that I need to fit in. So there is the photograph that I'm going to be working from. So you'll see it throughout. And I've got my usual setup, my board, my paper, my paints. And what I will do is I will explain all of those things as I go through the demonstration. What I have got to do is to just say a very quick hello to some of the people who are virtually waving at me. So hello to Ali, to Hilary, to Jackie, to Pam, to Thea, to Teresa. Who else have we got here? Ruth, good morning to you. Anne, good morning to you as well. Oh, and Jackie is telling me there's a beautiful book written by locals, so that's local to Jackie and myself in Dorset, with fab photos and info in the company of seahorses. Oh, I might have to look that up. Thank you very much. I love our little community. Isn't our community great that you get this information when you're tuning into a painting demo? Isn't that awesome? So let me take you through where I've got to and let's see where we go with it. So today I am using Hahnemuller Cornwall watercolour paper, an unusual watercolour paper. You might not have experimented with it before. It is quite heavy. It's 450 grams. This is quite a small pad, 24 by 32 centimetres, so just a tiny bit. Good morning, Rachel. Just a tiny little bit bigger than A4. Why have I kept it small? I've kept it small, A, because it's much easier to film, and B, because I need to get almost to the end of this project so that you can see it from start to finish. Now, this is a rough texture, and as you can see there, the paper is acid-free, age-resistant, bright white, and there it says again that it's rough. Now, when the Cornwall paper says that it's rough with a difference. There you can see I have got a little bit ahead of you and I have drawn it out. Can you see that texture on there? Let's get it in the close-up camera so that you can, oh, it might be, there we go. It looks almost like canvas. And I thought, seeing as my spiny seahorse is completely textural from top to bottom, I thought that this paper might be an interesting one. But it doesn't matter, you can use anything you like. It doesn't have to be that particular paper. I had this pad, and so I thought this would be a good place to start. And I'm actually going to start off with watercolour, and then we're going to see where we go. There will probably be a bit of pen work involved. There will probably be some gouache involved. All those kind of things. Good morning, Shizuka. Lovely to have you here. I know that our viewers are scattered all over the globe today, so I don't know what your time of day is, but thank you very much for taking the trouble to tune in. So where have I got to so far? I have not worried so much about the background. There's another painting, part of my 50 at 50, a different seahorse, where I've incorporated the background as much as I have the foreground. But this one, I really wanted to concentrate on that spiny seahorse to get that, to kind of get the characteristics and the personality of that creature in. So I've made it much bigger. I am going to put a background in, but it's not going to be of too much consequence. And I've drawn it out already, not with a particularly posh pencil. I have to even look to tell you what grade of pencil this is. It is a 2B pencil. And I've paid attention to a lot of the texture. In fact, I've exaggerated the texture quite a lot because, like I said, I want to bring that personality. And I haven't gone to the ends of the spines of my spiny seahorse because there's a technique that I want to do that if you saw December's Technique Tuesday where we were doing alcohol flowers, you will already be quite familiar with. And so you're going to need a drinking straw for this one, and I'm going to need to get my head in the shot. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see what transpires. So we'll get cracking. I have 4 colours here. I've sort of guessed what colours I need so far. I might change my mind. I have got my box just on the sidelines in case I do need some slightly different colours. But let me take you through them. Let's do them in order, shall we? We've got 4 colours here. 3 of them are from my collection of watercolours, but there are alternatives. We've got Bees Gold here, Cobalt Turquoise, Cobalt Blue, and then we've got Jane's Grey. That's a Daniel Smith one. Good morning, Lindsay. We've got, so 3 from my collection and a Daniel Smith Jane's Grey. Now, you might be wondering why I've got both Cobalt Turquoise and Cobalt Blue. I'm hoping that with the Bees Gold, we are going to get a selection of greens, but we will see what happens. Now, Ali is saying something interesting. When she had her boat, they were allowed to anchor off Studland, and you were occasionally lucky enough to be able to dive down amongst the seagrass and see them. Not a good thing to do. No, absolutely. But obviously, if you're very mindful of your surroundings, then you can actually see them. I've only ever seen them in an aquarium, it has to say, so I'm a little bit jealous of anybody who has seen them in the wild. So what else have I got going on here? I've got a selection of brushes to my left. To be honest, I don't think I'm going to need all of these brushes. In fact, I know I'm not going to need all of these brushes. When I do a live demonstration like this, what I try to do is have lots of kit around me so that I've got plenty of options. I'm going to go for this one to start with for my background. This is my Da Vinci Casaneo mop. So these are synthetic brushes. These are designed to act like natural hair, but to still be synthetic. So this is what is beautifully known as a synthetic squirrel. Good morning, Nuala. Lovely to have you here from Ireland. Thank you very much for tuning in. So that's the one I'm going to be using, and I'm going to have combinations of my cobalt turquoise, cobalt blue and bees gold. I tend to hold them in my hand like this, and this is a little something that I am testing out at the moment, just in case you wonder what this pad is. This is something I've been working on for the last couple of months. So I can't tell you too much about it at the moment because we haven't developed it yet. But keep an eye on the website for this pad. It's just a case of testing out if it works. So what I'm going to do, I could spray it, I could do all sorts of things, but because my background is not particularly important, all I'm going to do to start with is slosh some water on. And so hopefully what I'll get is a nice diffused background. Going to roll my brush in the bees gold and the cobalt turquoise at the same time. Let's pop that down on the paper. So it's mixing on the brush and on the paper, not in the palette. And we need to go up to these spines so that eventually it creates a nice backdrop. But what I'm desperately going to do today is to not overthink it. I want some vague green. Let's do that again. So into the bees gold, into the cobalt blue. And yes, I am going to get bees gold in my cobalt blue. Do I worry about such things? No, because life's too short. Let's get a slightly different version of that green going on. Let's even have it a little bit bluer and darker, so that when I get those spines in, I'm in grave danger of dunking my sleeve in it at the moment. Let's put a bit of that green in there. But you can see, you can see the texture starting to appear on the paper, and you can see quite how rough and ready I'm being with it, just because this is not my focus. My focus is the seahorse. I am going to, it's a bit sort of square in its composition at the moment, so let's drag that bottom corner out and set my paints to one side, grab a piece of kitchen roll, and let's knock the texture out of the kitchen roll so that I don't get that put back in. I think I've got enough kind of regular texture going on in the texture of the paper. What I want to do is to pull this into a cloud shape and do a cloud rag roll. So what I'm doing is very lightly passing that tissue back over my colour. On the Hahnemuller papers, it lifts really easily, so you can get some interesting, I'm sort of hoping that looks vaguely like seaweed, who knows. But what I don't want it to be is too dominant, because I want my seahorse to be quite deep and quite dark. You can see it's quite a strong colour on here. I just want to set the scene. And before I can do anything else, I need to dry that off. So out comes the good old heat gun, and let's give it a dry. So I'm keeping an eye on it to make sure that I don't get any back runs, or let's put it on a lower speed, or puddles. And if I wasn't demonstrating live, I would probably allow it to dry naturally, because sometimes when you accelerate the drying of something, it can suck the life out of your colour. So let's just, I'm just being lazy with it really. I'm just trying to get it to dry faster so that I can crack on with it for you. I am just going to take a good old slurp of coffee whilst we're drying. There we go, that's better. Right, let's turn the heat up again. It's taking a bit longer to dry than normal, just because it's so cold in my studio this morning. But let's get that dried off. I can't dry the back of the piece of paper. Drying the back of the piece of paper sometimes accelerates it, but this is a block and it's glued all the way round. So I can't do that. Just got to be patient. And all I really need is it dry near the seahorse. The rest will be okay, I think. I can tell when it's dry because the paper starts to go back flat again. And if you decide to follow along with this tutorial, then you can spend much longer on it. You can pop me on pause, all of those delightful things. Right, that'll do. As you can tell, I don't have any patience with my own work whatsoever. So now what we need to do is we need to start work on this seahorse. And there's a couple of things that I think I want to do to this. I'm not going to state them yet, just in case I change my mind. But the first thing I want to do is to lay down some colour and start to create these spines. So for that, I'm going to go back to my Bees Gold colour, but I'm also going to introduce Jane's Grey to it. Now, I could have put a brown in this. There's all sorts of things that I could have done with this, but I just didn't want there to be too many colours. I'm not necessarily thinking about creating this botanically. Good morning, Sharon. Good morning, Thyra. Lovely to have you here. What I'm trying to do is create a nice, strong colour, and then I'll go back in and do other things to it in a little bit. So what I want to do I want this brush is the first thing. No, I probably don't. I don't want it to be a sloppy application. I want to have some control over it. So I'm going to switch to my imitation sable brush. This is a size 10. And the first thing I'm going to do is to add some colour. Now, Rosie is asking a question. Is your Bees Gold similar to a gold that I've never heard of, actually, Rosie? Rosie, if you're still in the chat, can you tell me what brand that is? And I'll see if I recognise it. Oh, Quinn Gold. Typo. Yes, it is similar. Quinn Gold is just a little bit more orange than Bees Gold. Bees Gold has a slight sort of straw-like principle to it. But Quinn Gold would do the job marvellously. Thank you for your question. Always good to be able to answer them live. So let's go into that Bees Gold and let's start applying some colour down here on the chest of our spiny seahorse. Get this in. I'm having a look at the photograph. I kind of want my seahorse to glow a little bit, and the Bees Gold is definitely going to do that. But if I drop some, just a little bit, oh, she says just a little bit, let's use that pad, of the Jane's Grey, you'll see that I get a really interesting mix out of them on the paper. And I don't want this to be a paint by numbers scenario. So I'm not going to try to paint in every last little element of it. I'm going to try to allow it to flow on the paper. I'm going to hit and miss it a little bit. I probably need some darker version in there. And I'm going to just start some of those spines because I'm going to do something else to them in just a second. Let's get that fin in. Now what do I want to do next? I think what I actually want to do is to just mop those up a touch, because I have a feeling I know what I want to do with those. Let's work on the main part of our seahorse first. So let's get a nice deep shadow in here. So here and there I'm being careful, and then in other places I'm just sort of allowing it to skip and hit and miss. Let's get that bees gold into there. It creates a little bit of a greeny version as opposed to a brown version, but I had to make a choice about some of these colours, and this is the route I decided to go down. Let's bring that colour in over past the eye. Really pleased with that. I am getting a cauliflower occurring in there, so let's change the properties of how wet that is, and actually let's do a bit of a lift on there so that we get a transition from one to the other. It's going to take a bit of work, this, but that's okay. This number 10 brush working really well, also with having quite a decent point on it, so that I can get into some of those nooks and crannies. And then let's just keep an eye on this. Maybe we'll encourage this to run a little bit down the page. Let's soften this and let's make it a bit more golden coming down. Now this is in no way the last layer of colour that I'm putting on here, so I don't have to worry too much about the depth of it at the moment. Do I want to do anything else? I'm not too wild about that coming down. I think this needs to be deeper, so I can get this going wet into wet to give that a good shadow. That's much better. And then let's get this going wet into wet. That shadow kind of comes up and around, starting to lose the eye, but I can always lift that out with my brush like that. The good thing is, because this is so textured, you're not going to do it any harm by being quite rough with it. What else do I want down here? I want it to be darker along the back, but I've missed my opportunity to add anything else in there because that's starting to dry. So I think once again I'm going to need to give it a blast with the heat gun and see what I've got. Let's do a little bit of mopping so that I don't get too much of a cauliflower going on. That looks okay. Let's give it another blast with the heat gun and then we'll see what we've got. So I've got to be a bit more careful with it this time and really make sure that the shine has gone off it. Oh, I'm going to get a big old cauliflower there. Let's lift that before it goes bad. I can always go back in and do something else with that in a minute. That'll do. You won't have nearly so many problems with it because you'll be much more patient with it than I am. Right, let's go for a smaller brush and let's start to develop these spines. Now I am going to have to break the golden rule of recording, and I am going to have to get the top of my head in the shot. But the reason for that is I want to pop some colour down and then blow it with a straw to get these spiny shapes without them being too contrived and me painting them in. That's what I didn't want. So what do we want for this? Now the tips of them are white in the photograph, but they're sort of showing up like that because they're against a very dark background. So because I love this combination so much, I'm going to continue with the combination of Bees Gold and Jane's Grey. I've got to move my chair back a little bit. So let's drop a little bit of colour. So this is a puddle of colour here. It's quite a blob. I'll show you it in the close-up camera in a little bit. And then I'm going to get my straw. And then can you see what I end up with is this lovely kind of spiny shape. But it's not me having painted it in. Now, if I wet a bit of that as well, I can get another shape coming off it. Now, it's actually probably a bit on the tall side. but that's okay. It's only just because it's one of them and I haven't developed the others yet. Let's repeat that process. Let's have a slightly different colour this time. So we've got a bit more of the Bees Gold and a little bit less of the Jane's Grey. So we've got one going off at an angle. Let's develop that one. So it is still quite controllable. There we go, coming off. And I can always lift out the bits that I don't want. But can you see how they've got a sort of a much more organic feel to them? I'm going to need to do some work to them, but not yet. I can have fun kind of making the shapes. Okay, this is cool. Right, going on with that. So you'll need to practice to work out how much paint, how much water, how wet you need it to be, all of that kind of stuff. But do it on just do it on a scrap of watercolour paper first, and then by the time you actually get to your subject matter, you'll be able to control it. So let's do some stronger ones here. Let's do a couple at a time now. Oh, those are cool. I like those. They sort of went off at a much jauntier angle. And some more, I think. Let's get them into the close-up camera so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. Let's just move my pad so that you can see the top of it. So can you see all that delicious texture going on now? It's great, isn't it? I love this paper. A bit of a dot in there. There we go. So you can see how it's moving it. You can always use your tissue to shorten them if you're not happy about them. Let's do some more, couple in there. So you can see I'm putting a little puddle of colour down. You can always add more water to it, and then I'm leaning across it to get that lovely pattern in. So you've got these amazing shapes going on. Lots of seahorse chatter going on in the live chat. That's really cool. It's always lovely to hear people's experiences when they interact with wildlife, isn't it? Okay, so we've got some really, I think that one's probably a bit on the long side. Let's go back to the overhead and see what they look like in context. They're looking good, aren't they? They're giving it some character and personality. Still not quite enough yet for me, but we are getting there. Let's do a few more down the back. So we're dotting that in. I've got to sort of lean across now. Got a few smaller ones. Let's have a bigger one in here. Actually, while I'm at it, let's start blending these into the back of the seahorse as well. Ooh, that was a good one. That's a really cool one, isn't it? Like that. Can you tell I'm having fun? Maybe again, we don't want it to be quite that long, and I think actually we need a bit of darker something going. Oh, come here. Going in there too. What's going on here? Come on, Ali, pick up the right amount of colour. There we go. That's better. And then maybe just some slightly smaller ones coming down. Oh, I've lost me puff. Hardly surprising. Let's get a few more in. Coming around, last few. That's cool. Right, I'm really pleased with those. That's really smart. Liking those a lot. Now, I'm pushing my luck to be going back in and adding some extra colour to these right now, but I think we'll be okay with it. So let's start adding some shadows to this because I've got a little technique coming up that I want to share with you, and I want to show this pattern that shows that our seahorse isn't flat. Got a big dollop of water on there, so I'm going to paint that bit in negatively with my Jane's Grey so we can incorporate these. What's happening down here? That needs to be softened a touch. What else have we got going on? We need to sort of get a nod. There's a fin here and there's one up here, but I've obliterated that. Maybe that'll need some highlights on it later. Let's get probably a swipe of grey into that shape so that we're acknowledging there's a fin there. That's okay. What else do we need? We need a shadow that extends from here down into this chest area. So you can see I'm using that blending out technique. So the colour goes down, brush goes in the water, on the pad or on the kitchen roll, whichever I happen to hit at the time, and then I'm softening that colour. Where else do we want there to be some extra colour? I think we want some extra Jane's Grey in a bit of a sort of linear fashion to show the kind of ribs on our seahorse. Maybe not quite that strong. I know I've got something else lined up for you to show you another texture technique for this, so I'm not overly concerned about getting that perfect. What do I want to happen here? I think I want to sort of fuzz this out. Let's have a look at this face, muzzle, nose, all of those things. And I need to have a really good look. I've got my photograph on the device. Thank you. Thank you to all of those who are saying that it's starting to come together now. Thank you very much. Let's go back in with this. This is a size 6 brush, incidentally. And I want to put some depth in that eye straight away because we need to bring that out. But that will probably need some extra work later on. And I think we need to make our seahorse look like it's had a night out. So a few rings around would be helpful. Soften that a little bit. Maybe darken up this area. Looks a bit target-like. So I think I'm going to need to do some work with the gouache in there. And then we've got this slight shadow needed underneath to show that the snout, because it's a long snouted seahorse, isn't it? Has got 3 dimensions. And I think what I'm going to do, just cheekily, quickly if I can, to make this stand out more, I've got a very even tone going on there. So I think to make this stand out a bit more, what I'm going to do is go back in with the cobalt blue and a bigger brush, because it doesn't work with a size 6 brush, Ali, and pop some darker colour into there so that that muzzle starts to come out a bit. What's going on down here? That's darker, that's darker, that's dark that's dark anyway. So let's stick some of this in, and let's make sure that we don't just give it a halo, that we actually push that colour into other areas to bring it out. Okay, that's better, but that's a bit of a straight line, so we'll bring that out. Does it need anything else? No, not at the moment. I think what it needs now, look at how much water I've slopped over everything. I think what it needs now is another dry. So if you are watching this live and you have questions for me about this, now is the time to get them in. Morning, Joe. So, getting there with the drying now. I've blocked it all in so that it's certainly got a covering of colour. This is the way that I use watercolour the most, really, which is to just get colour onto everything. And then when I've got colour on everything, then I can see the seahorse for the seaweed, because if you've still got areas of your painting left to attack, I find it very difficult to see what else it needs. So let's dry this off. Oh, thank you, Sharon. Getting that on. Dry. Let's just make sure that the body is dry because I know what's about to happen. There we go. I think that, yes, thank you, Anne. Lots of people saying that the spines look natural. I always find that if you want something to look natural in a painting, you want to interfere with it as little as possible. Then hopefully you'll get that kind of organic looking mark making rather than you trying to force the issue. I'm not saying that painting them in detail is incorrect. What I'm saying is it doesn't suit my style of painting. So where I look to make random marks all the time and to try to pull subjects out of those random marks, this style of application suits my work a lot better. Okay, nice little fun technique for you now. This is a lifting out technique because I still want there to be some extra texture on here. I've got to go back in with some detail. I've got to go back in with some gouache and kind of bring it together a bit more. But I thought it would be fun to show you a stenciling technique. Now, what's interesting about this technique is that it might not work on this paper. If you have got Saunders Waterford paper, excuse me, or something that is a much harder paper, Milford is a good one, then this will work better. It will also work really well if you use a magic sponge. So those kind of white sponges that you use to clean up the grouting on your tiles and all of those kind of things. There's two reasons why I'm not doing that. One is that I really wanted to use the Cornwall paper for the textural elements. So I am going to have a bit of a challenge doing this technique in a second. And I'm trying very hard to not use magic sponges anymore because I prefer to use more natural, and this sponge is made out of coconut. It's actually a little miniature version of a washing up sponge that I would use. So I'm not sure if this is going to work. Come along with me for the ride. And here's two stencils that I'm going to be using for this. Don't ask me where I got my stencils from, because my stencils are acquired over a very long period of time. They are grabbed when I see them, or if I go to a trade show, or if I see them online, or I buy up secondhand art materials all the time. So I can't tell you where I got these stencils from. Just keep an eye out for similar things. So this one's one of my favourite, as you can see, very well used, because it's got tiny holes. But you could use a punch or something similar. There is food packaging that will create a very similar texture. And this one, which I've never actually used before, I sort of found it in the bottom of my box, which has a bit of a crackle texture to it. I don't know whether I'm going to need one of them, both of them, or if I'm going to abandon it altogether. Just come along with me for the ride and we'll see where we get to. So the idea is that you lay the stencil down and you scrub the paint away, and then hopefully when you lift it off, it will expose a really interesting texture. And actually, it's a good job I got my scissors here, because I think this bit of sponge is going to be far too big. So let's cut it up straight away. I'm only going to need this tiny bit. Dunk that in the water. I know my water is grubby, but never mind. Dear. Right, and then let's think about where I want this pattern. I don't want there to be too much pattern on the face. I think I want there to be greater pattern on the body. So let's use that sponge. What you're trying to do is kind of scrub the paint away from the surface. And my sponge isn't very wet at all. In fact, it's kind of almost dry, if you see what I mean. And then hopefully, this needs a drum roll, doesn't it? When I pull that away, look at that. Yeah, brilliant. Oh, I'm so happy that that worked. I really wasn't sure if it was going to. Look how fabulous that texture is and created, and I had to do very little work to it. Always a bonus. I want to do a bit more here. I think I want to do a bit at the top. Very tempting when it does work to go to town on it and want to do it everywhere. But I'm going to try to exercise a little bit of restraint. And then where should we do it? A little bit up the top. I think I want a slightly smaller pattern. Who thought I would be this picky? Oh, look, there's a little heart shape there. I don't know that I want that to show. Actually, it look a bit contrived. Let's go for this up top. Yeah, that's just broken it up enough. And then let's get the dots involved. Just here and there. I want there to be some patterning. I need to break up this funny thing that happened. So let's use just a touch of it here. Yeah, that's really cool. Loving that. And then maybe some here. You are all clearly loving this technique. It is one of my favourites. I do use it a lot. And let's pull that away. We've got other things. And then I think I'm going to have to call it a day. Otherwise, I'm in grave danger of overpainting it. So again, I need to give that a bit of a dry. Hi, Viv, you're right. Let's get that on. And in. And then I think we're on the road to finishing our seahorse. And then this painting is going to be made available a little bit later on in the month as part of my 50 at 50 auction, but I'll tell you more about that at the end. So we'll get that in. Okay, now is a really tricky part of any painting, isn't it? You've got so far with it, and I'm quite pleased with it. So now I've got to find ways of completing it without overpainting it, okay? And I did have some contingency plans here. Pen, that's where I'm going to start. So this is a waterproof sketching pen. This is a grey version, so it's not going to be as intrusive as maybe a black or something similar. Let's have a look at my photograph. What I'm going to try to do is to just pull back some of the detail that I've either overpainted or has disappeared. And I think as well, what I'm going to try to do is to use my grey pen to extend or add to some of the spines to give a bit of detail. Even maybe here and there outlining. I'm going to paint that in because I really don't like that. It's a big patch that I'm not happy about. So sometimes you just have to fix things because they're not working. Let's get rid of that nonsense. So let's use a bit of our Jane's Grey. There we go. That's much better, isn't it? Oh, am I faffing? Of course I am. Do I tell you not to do it? Of course I do. Prerogative of a teacher. Right, let's add to these spines. Let's get them a little bit, with a little bit more detail. Again, I don't want to overdo it. And like I said, in the photograph, they have got kind of white ends, but yours don't need white ends. They wouldn't show up anyway over the top of such a pale background. So don't be tempted to religiously follow that photograph, otherwise you'll be in trouble. Right, this, can you see this one? Very angular. Looks like I've painted it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to remove a few bits of it to stop it looking quite so artificial. Even though I blew it, it still looks a bit odd. Now here's a bonus of Hahnemuller paper. You can lift colour off really easily. So don't have to worry about that. Probably shouldn't be drawing back into it, into wet paper with a felt pen or sticking my hand in stuff. Oh, Ali, you really don't save yourself sometimes, do you? Let's add to this. Let's extend this one. So we're just kind of adding to the texture. Very similar technique to what I do for tree branches, if I'm honest. This one's a bit angular here too. Let's pop some of the detail back into this fin shape that we've got. What else? I know what I'm desperate to do, but I'm not letting myself do it yet. Some people are having some interesting issues with the subtitles, with the closed captions on this video. So that is Jane's Grey. So that's Janes. So I'm not using Payne's Grey with a P. I am using Jane's Grey with the letter J. Okay? Sorry about that. That's the delight of closed captions and my Dorset accent. Okay, putting in some texture on that chest, looking back into these shapes to pull some of these away. So I'm getting quite scribbly with my pen work now to try to not overdo it. But what it definitely needs, without a shadow of a doubt, is some white highlight. Now, I've got two whites that I could use. I've got my white Posca pen, which is a very fine acrylic paint marker, or I've got some white gouache here. I think what I'm going to do is use the pen for the detail and the gouache for a bit of texture at the end. So Anne is asking, how do Jane's grey and Payne's grey differ? So they are different components in their makeup, Anne. Payne's grey I don't particularly like. It usually, and this is a very general sweeping statement, Payne's grey usually has a very high staining blue, a black, and sometimes a pink pigment in it. So you've got three pigments in there. I don't particularly like Payne's grey. It doesn't suit the colour palette that I work with. And when I'm teaching beginners, they find using it, it makes mud very easily. Jane's grey is still a convenience colour, so it's still two pigments mixed together, but it's basically an ultramarine and a burnt umber, so you get a much fresher, more translucent looking grey, and it makes better mixes. But that is only my opinion, and take it with a very large pinch of salt. All right, I hope that helped. So let's clean up the nib of my Posca pen because I don't look after my equipment. And let's make sure that that pen keeps running. Now, Joe is asking, where did you get the coconut sponge from? I really don't like using the plastic ones from the supermarket. To be honest, Joe, I can't remember, but I will look it up for you. And the next time you are in the All Aboard Artists or similar, remind me and I'll see if I've got to the bottom of that answer. Good morning, Annette. She's wishing everybody a happy new year. Don't worry if you can't watch all of it right now, that is fine. Let's have a look at this seahorse eye and see if we can add a bit of extra detail. Let's get it into the close-up camera as well so that you can see what I'm doing with it. Bring that down. So I'm just trying to break up that eye section so that it's not a big blob. I don't want it to be kind of overdrawn. Not in the financial sense, in the artistic sense. Let's get some linear work. So we're getting some personality into this. Maybe we want a little bit of a highlight coming down that muzzle. I want to put this fin back in because these fins against the head are quite an important detail. They don't have to be over described, I don't think. I think it's just a case of pulling some of it forwards. We've got, oh, excuse me, these little nodes that come down the back. Let's pop a few kind of broken highlights into some of the texture as well. But I am in such grave danger of faffing. So I think what I will do to finish it off is put it back into shot first. I think all it really needs is a little bit of spatter in white gouache, and then I can leave it alone. So I've got my white gouache squeezed out into my little tinting saucer here. Let's give that a good old mix. I want it kind of single cream, double cream consistency or similar, coated with my brush. The size of the brush that you use will determine the size of the spatter. And if you hang on till the end of this broadcast, I will take you over to a place where you can see some new free videos. So that's your incentive for hanging around till the end. Right, over here, I'm going to tap in a little bit of white spatter. You've got that texture that's evident on the photograph anyway. Let's do some coming down the back. And then to give our seahorse a bit of movement so that maybe it's not quite so static, I want to spatter another colour. Now the big question is, do I spatter in the Jane's Grey, which is the colour of the Seahorse, or do I spatter in something else? I'm just going to try and see if spatter in the Cobalt Turquoise shows up, or whether it doesn't do the job. I sort of want it to look like it's moving through the water, that it's kind of got those kind of little air bubbles around it. I don't really want much in front of its face. And then another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some of those spots with my spray bottle so that they diffuse into the background. And then you don't get all hard ones, you get soft ones too. And I think I'm going to call that a day. I think that is my interpretation of my long-snouted, spiny seahorse all done and dusted. I did not think I was going to get it done that quickly. I really, really didn't. Now, there's information that I need to impart so that you know where to go and find the resources, where to go and look at the 50 and 50 auction, and to show you some new tuition that is cropping up. So do bear with me, don't disappear on me yet. Let's go over to my website, www.learningtopaint.co.uk. And you will see, so I'm on the blog at the moment. Can you see at the top in the menu it says blog, and there's I need to actually refresh that page, because what should happen by now, yes, there we go, there is the Technique Tuesday for January, and if you click or tap on the read more, you will see a little bit of extra information. You will see the equipment that I have used today, and eventually you will see the painting and the broadcast. If you are interested in supporting the 50 at 50, there's a page dedicated for it, and you want to go to the auction part of it. There's information which you can read about on there, and you will see all of the paintings so far. We're up to number 15, but as you can imagine, there's plenty in the bag. And all of those paintings are being auctioned off. You can't buy one outright. They're starting at £50, so it makes them very affordable. They will go on display during Dorset Art Weeks, which is the last week in May and the first week in June. And then when Dorset Art Weeks is over, they will go to the highest bidders. And then the other thing that you might be interested in is that there's a huge new section on my website, which might have passed you by, which is this Page You Learn Creative Tutorials, which I am just adding to at the moment. Got a spinny wheel of doom there at the present time. Now there's tutorials there that you can buy standalone. We have one there at the moment because this month's theme is Under the Sea. So there's a beautiful rainbow octopus tutorial there, which is done with brusho and watercolour. But you may have noticed there that there are some free videos to be had. You just need to create an account on my website, but that doesn't cost you any money either. And there's a video there about how to use a ruling pen. There's a video about how to use trace down. And next month there'll be a tutorial about how to create spatter. So that's what I was talking about in that seahorse demonstration. That there will be a nice tutorial there for you to understand it even more. Now I'm just going to have a quick look at the live chat to see if there's any questions. Lots of techniques, people are loving it today. People had been looking forward to this demo. It is my absolute pleasure to share it with you. There's loads of information coming up. I'm up to all sorts of things this month. If you go onto the website, you can see very easily all the things that I'm up to. We've got a tips and tricks free video coming up on the 16th, which is working with gouache. I've got a workshop next week, and then one the week after where we're doing coral reef and jellyfish, all sorts of things. But if you ever need to get in touch with me, you can do that through the website or by emailing me, Ali, A-L-I, at learningtopaint.co.uk. Now I've got to look at my notes because I've got to remind myself, these notes, I've got to remind myself when I am back with you. So Technique Tuesday is back on Tuesday the 6th of February, so the first Tuesday in the month. And our theme for February is amethyst, lavender and violet. So all things purple. I can't imagine where that inspiration came from. And that one's going to be a little bit different because rather than doing a painting, I'm going to answer your questions about colour mixing. In particular, excuse me, violets. That's what we're going to be doing. So hopefully I will see you then. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to tune in live, and if you're watching on catch up too, thank you very much for your support. I hope that 2024 is a fantastically creative year for all of you, and keep in touch, won't you? Let's build on this community and help each other out. So until I see you either virtually, online or in person, take lots of care, won't you? Lovely to have had you here today. Hope you enjoyed the Seahorse. See you soon.